words, a waste of breath, 'cause I've got none to say. Thoughts stay burned inside my chest, can't take it one more day. No matter how much pain I'm in, no matter how, gotta think, I gotta breathe. Changes to come.
Ezra Naines, Mayor of the Borough of State College. Hello, everyone. I'm Ezra Naines, Mayor of the Borough of State College. I'm proud to announce that the borough will once again be a gold sponsor for the Strategies for Justice annual symposium on conscious law enforcement and inclusive practices. This symposium is invaluable to our community because it fosters conversations on topics that can provoke powerful emotions and touch on our most basic needs for safety, acknowledgement, and recognition. Law enforcement plays a crucial role in our community's success and well-being. It's imperative that we create a safe and respectful space for dialogue to enhance consciousness and inclusivity, and to address historical inequities and to heal generational trauma. I hope this event will demonstrate our capacity to collaborate towards common goals, and let's acknowledge the efforts in each of our communities to amplify voices of marginalized groups and to foster appreciation for this vital work. Special thanks to Terry Watson for your leadership and to each of you for your service. Let's have a successful symposium.
Good evening and welcome to this keynote address, where we are honored to be joined by two remarkable individuals, Ron Hampton and Tyrone Parker. Together they bring forth a wealth of experience and insight, illuminating the multifaceted approaches to public safety. My name is Terry Watson, and I am the founder of Strategies for Justice, and I am pleased to start off this fourth annual symposium on conscious law enforcement and inclusive practices with Ron Hampton and Tyrone Parker. I want to let people know that we will be monitoring the chat, so if you have questions, please do ask. Before we proceed, I want to thank our sponsors for making this symposium accessible to all, removing the cost barrier for those, and also a special thank you go to Penn State Outreach for providing tonight's ASL interpretation. Hampton and Parker will invite us to reimagine public safety through the lens of those who've been systematically impacted, and why it's so important to make sure we are involving all stakeholders in crafting solutions to really contemporary challenges. So as we dive deeper into this discussion, please take your notes, bring them tomorrow for our interactive sessions, because we are hoping that tonight's message will resonate with you. Together, let us embark on a journey of exploration and discovery, guided by the wisdom and the passion of Ron Hampton and Tyrone Parker. May their words inspire us to forge a pathway to a safer and more just future. And with that said, take it away, Ron Hampton and Tyrone Parker.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much, Terry and Strategies for Justice, for inviting us to participate in this process today. I'm looking forward to that. Tyrone?
It's such an exciting moment to be able to have this type of a discussion, especially after hearing the mayor as he laid out his perspectives on what we will accomplish. And Terry, I commend you for your vision, your spirit. I am excited about this moment.
Yeah, I am too, Tyrone. I've had an opportunity to work with Terry for a while, like you, although ours have been longer, but I've had the opportunity to work with him in Strategies for Justice, and in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the relationship that you and I have had and the things that we've done over a long period of time. There are forces out there who don't think that we somehow or another match up, but we do match up. We come from the same community. We even went to the same high school, even though it was at different times, and we lived in the same time and community. So it was it was it. I always think about you and think about the work that we've done, because it has sort of like continued to sort of hold my feet to the ground about the things that I believe, because I've been able to see them through you and the work that you all have done at the Alliance of Concerned Men, and the opportunity for people like me to be involved in that process.
Yes, Ron, you're absolutely correct in the contents of how far back we go and what really bridged us together. And as I mentioned to you when I was nothing but a kid on the other side of the fence, the police had me in the police station. The old-fashioned component, putting a telephone book on your head and did hit the top of the phone book to insert some form of pain. And during that time, you was a police and you was there, and you told me, no, we're not gonna do this. And that was the really beginning of a real bonding that has been materializing ever since. And when I look at the work that we're doing there in the contents of working with the youth and working with the crews and working with the gangs in the streets, and how do that look pertaining to public safety from a previously incarcerated person, who basically at the age of 19, I was doing 45 years for robbery, and upon being released, begin to make the transition of understanding what my commitment must be to my community and family. So having said that, Ron, I'm going to throw it back to you, and we're going to take a beautiful journey, but it's a journey that we're going to be able to explain some things that most folks would never understand.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tyrone. And I spent 24 years as a police officer myself here in Washington, D.C. I grew up and born and raised here. And when I came home from the service, I sort of hesitated, because I don't know if I really wanted to be a police, because I was like everybody else in the community. I was doing crazy stuff, but I loved that basketball though. That was a love I just couldn't shake. But I ended up joining the police department. But when I went there, I also had the benefit of having been in the Air Force for 5 years and really seeing how racism impacted Black folk and my experiences, not only in Vietnam, but in other parts of the world. And so when I went on the police department, I was determined that I wasn't going to allow that to interfere with how I thought public safety should be, as well as who my friends was going to be. And I was able to do that, to have that experience, and then plus enjoy it. Plus, at the end of the day, I was there because I represented my community, and I believe that to my heart. And even in the work that we do now, and that's one of the things that I pay attention to you and the Alliance of Concerned Men about, because you all do it for the community. You do it with the community. You don't set yourself above the community. You're right there with them, and I've always believed that. So I'm excited too. I remember the first time that we met, other than the police station. Look, you all had taken on the challenge of working in what they called at that time Simple City, and I used to wonder why that name, it was so negative, that why did that name attach it? And then as I began to read and talk to other people about it, then I understood what it was happening and all of the stuff that was going on there. But that was an opportunity for me to go into Benton Heights, because that's exactly the area that it was, and then start working. I had the honor and pleasure of working with you all and doing some community. At that time, we wasn't calling it community policing, but what the work that you all were doing, it was at the community level. And I had a chance to go in and talk with people, because I was working in the police department. I was working in program development. So I went there with the express goal of organizing communities so that they could do things for themselves.
You know what, Ron, and you're absolutely correct, because, during that time that you primarily speak of, the District of Columbus was considered as the murder capital of the USA. And we had 484 homicides per year in that particular time, at that particular time. And what brought us into being terrorists was when a 12-year-old kid was kidnapped and killed on his way to school, shot 3 times in his head. And we as community persons, the Alliance of Concerned Men, said, man, we got to do something about what was going on, because our city was just nothing but a killing field. And we decided to go into Benton Terrace, a public housing, right, known as one of the most dangerous communities in the District of Columbia, and began to reach out to these young kids to find out why was they killing each other, what was this gang war about, and what was occurring. And fortunately, man, through the grace of God, we was able to reach both sides after a period of time, and was able to bring them kids together to negotiate a truce. And that truce, basically, to this point here, has still somewhat sustained. But the interesting thing about it, Ron, is that the police was also a part of our challenges when we went into this particular community to begin to do the work. Because, you know, they was looking at us from the perspective, well, these are ex-offenders, you know, so what perspective do they tend to take on public safety? What is their concern about? They're probably doing some underhanded things and involved in it. So we had to really establish a relationship with the community, with the police, and all of these things at the same time, and being on parole, you know, all some challenges for a lot of the guys that was doing it. But at the same time, our greatest concern was public safety, so that we could have a safe community where the children could play and people could come out on their front yard, because this community at that time was under house arrest and being held under house arrest by the youth that lived in the gangs that was in that community.
Right. No, that's right. And DC was unique in the sense that we haven't had gangs here, but we had crews. And crews were defined as these loose-knit groups that may vary from block to block. No real leadership, but people that was involved in things. And you know this as well, and even more than I do, that sometimes the issue that brought the crews together, the ones that was in there at that time didn't even know what the history in the past was even about. They just knew that that was something that they were expected to do. But when we went in there, talked with them people, talked about the kind of things. And this was even before they started talking about community policing. But what we wanted to do, and for me, I just wanted folk to know that they could do certain things themselves, that they could control their community. And with the help of the Alliance of Concerned Men, with the fact that you all were standing up, demonstrating, being role models for them young people, and showing that they didn't have to get in trouble in order to sort of make a name for themselves, because that those were some of the things that was going around that you all were dealing with. But it was just really important. It was a lot of women out there too. Wasn't a whole lot of men. But when you all showed up and decided that you was going to do it, then that really set an example for what was going on in that community, as well as what it would eventually look like. I remember Tyrone meeting this young man who was part of the crews, and he was on his way to really getting in trouble. And then I watched you all bring him along. He eventually went to college, had a family, and I know at one of the things that you all had, this was back before you even retired, and the young man had come, and there was an event going on, and you had a chance to introduce him and talk about his history, but more important, what he's doing now and his future.
You know, Ron, and that was Derek Ross.
That's right.
And Derek ran the circle, who was fighting against Avenue in this particular community, and he ran it with an iron fist. I mean, nothing moved without Derek's consent. You know, the police wouldn't even come into that particular area. The community was in fear. They had no services, cable services. They didn't even have those type of ordinary services because of the fear and the circumstances of the community. But once we came in and they saw that we as strong Black men was there to begin to reach out to them and to teach them and to show them with love and concern, they began to understand. But we also came with an extraordinary thing, because, you know, After a period of time, David Gilmour, who was the receiver of DC housing, also gave us jobs to be able to give these kids.
That's right. That's right.
Final analysis, it boiled down to love, opportunities, and mentoring. That really made an impact on this.
When you said that, Tyrone, what that reminded me of, I remember, and this was up on 7th and 6th Street. There was some issues going on up there at 6th and N, 7th and N, and all that. They was at each other's throat, and you went up there, pulled them all together, I believe it was at the church that was up there, and you had them all over there talking about it, and you told them, say, look, I want to bring the chief of police in because I think the police department was offering money for guns at one time. And the young men, but see, this goes to show you that it's deeper than what it is, what we see on the surface. The young people have been talking about that they wanted to turn in the guns and whatnot. So you went and got the chief of police, talked in the coming up. This is when the white woman, Kathy Lanier, was there. She came to the thing, you sit down, she came in, they were sitting down talking to her and whatnot. And then, because you tell the story, I want you to tell the story, because go ahead and tell the story.
That was an interesting story, because at that point in time, up in 7th and 8th and 7th and 0, in the Shaw area, you had two crews that was fighting. And American University contacted us because of the work that we had did almost 10 to 12 years ago in regards to negotiating a truce in that very same area. And they asked, by virtue of what was occurring, and that they wanted to begin to make some type of investment in regards to public service and juvenile violence. And they asked, well, we take a look at it again. So we took a look at it and saw that these were kids that we knew. So it was just a matter of bringing them together. We couldn't find a place after talking with them and discussing the situation. We couldn't find a church that we could take them to. We couldn't find a recreation center that we could take them to begin. So we wound up taking them to Starbucks. And in the midst of the Starbucks, man, we had about 25 kids in there talking about how can we stop the violence? What could they do together? And they were prepared. Just so happened, I went to my car after we was talking and saw Kathy Lanier, who was the deputy police chief of the city. Diane Grooms. And
Grooms, I remember.
And I asked Diane Grooms, will she come in? Because one of the things that we believe wholeheartedly, that the police can play a part in regards to the transformation of the city. If their hearts are right, if their spirits are right, then we can bring them in as a part of the equation, especially if they're having the reputation that the Alliance of Concerned Men had. Because we went all through the city negotiating truce among the kids. But on this particular story, when Kathy Lanier came in, Diane Grooms came in, she asked the kids, she said, well, what was the violence about? Was it about the crap games that was occurring up there? Or what? And one little kid that was in a wheelchair, little Gerald, up there right today, little Gerald said, well, if it's about the crap games, if y'all give us something to do, then I could stop every crap game in 20 minutes. This is one of the kids said, but KD said, why don't you let us turn our guns in for jobs? And that was the beginning of the conversation. These kids told the deputy police chief, won't you let us turn our guns in for jobs?
Guns for jobs.
They put it on the table and told the police chief. The police chief took it back to the mayor of the city, who looked at it and said, well, we'll raise the reward from $1,500 to $2,500. Them kids weren't looking for money. They were looking for opportunities.
That's exactly right.
And it never materialized.
See, that's the problem. See, what it is that you all have been able to do from the very beginning to even now, what it is that the Alliance of Concerned Men are doing for and their reputation is about making that connection and really getting to the fundamental foundation issues of what it is that in our community that our young people need. It's just amazing. We were in a meeting, Tyrone, over at the mosque, and there was a gentleman there that was in the medical field, and he was talking about, what the percentage is that are the things that impact us most. And we're led to believe that if we, for example, that if we are in good health, we're going to make it. That we're going to be in good health the rest of our life and everything's going to be hunky-dory. The fact of the matter was the story that the brother had, the study that the brother had been involved in revealed that good health was only 20% of a well-being community, and all the other things, housing, schools, jobs, all of those were the things that really made up a well-meaning and being community, and the public health and health in itself was only 20%. That's why those things are super important, and the police just don't do it. I mean, I was a police for 24 years, and I knew and met some good guys. But by and large, when you talk about the institution of policing in our society, it has not met the test for our community of the things that we need. That's why you, the credible messengers, the violence interrupters, those entities that work in our community is the key to well-being communities. And we have to make that transition, Tyrone. We got to reimagine it in the kind of way that it's going to be healthy for us and that we're going to be able to do the kind of thing, because I don't want to see a time where it's a police state. And that looks like where we've been leaning to here lately, because there's some things, you know yourself, that we're seem to be going backwards rather than forwards.
You know, Ron, I remember when we were up in Washington Highlands and we were looking to see how could we basically reduce the dependence and the presence of the police. And because, you know, by all means, when Miss Sadie, who's in her house, and the kids are out on the front shooting crap and smoking marijuana, and she's under house arrest, they're scared to come out, we got to have options for her to be able to come outside. Out her own door. And this is where community, this is where you have organizations such as the Alliance, accredited messengers, Cure the Streets, can act as individuals to give safe passage. But not only that, help to reduce incarceration, because Miss Sadie, she wants her freedom. And she's going to call the police. And in turn, the police is going to come. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to lock the kids up. And it's only going to add to the numbers. So we begin to look at, how do we move that pendulum around? Because all these kids basically want is somebody that can believe in them, that's going to love them, and going to work with them, and understand that it's never a period. It is always a comma in the contents of it. And my last statement to this here was like when I stated, when we first started this work in 1991, it's 484 homicides a year. In 2012, as a collective community, we was able to bring that down to 88 homicides in the District of Columbia. And then going to the mayor, asking could he support from 88 to 0, because we as communities saw 0 in the nation's capital. But they had accomplished their purposes, which was to bring it from the murder capital of the USA to one of the 10 best places to live, and generations of resources and tax bases increased. And this is part of the unification.
But you know, the politicians that were around then were very different than the ones that we have now, Tyrone. And you know, we had a group of politicians here in the city. Mary Berry was here. We had people on the council who was very supportive, who were open-minded when it came to what I'm going to call a policing philosophy, because it has to be a partnership in terms of getting things done. When you look at the analysis of what it is, for example, I know in this city that 80 to 85% of the police officers don't live in the city. Then you need to utilize the people who live in the city and familiar with the situation in the city to reduce the things that are going on, because they can address it. When we went out to Highland, we were out there together again, and we were talking with Miss Sadie, and we was talking with them about this issue. There was some pushback in the very beginning because they've been conditioned. They've been brainwashed that every time something happened, they need to call the police. When the fact of the matter was that they didn't really need the police. And when we spent some time with them, not only having a conversation, but educating them on the process of how you get to the place of understanding not only what you have in relationship to the problems, but how you address the problems, and then you apply the resources that you have in your community to the problem. See, we didn't know that they had some social workers out there. We didn't know that they had counselors out there. We didn't know that they had youth workers out there. They had some young people that was out there that was working in other places. And so you don't have to call the police. What you need to do is you can go next door and then ask the parent to go out there to get their children out in front of the community center shooting crap, and they're more apt to respond to their parents saying something to them than the police saying something to them. And like you said, the police are going to threaten them and then lock them up. And that just takes me to what we're talking with now with the re-establishment of drug zone, move on stuff that we went through 10, 15, 20 years ago that didn't do anything other than create mass incarceration. And here we go, starting down that same road again, rather than talking about the kind of issues that build community and community can be involved in, as well as the strong-willed Black men and women who are filling the roles as credible messengers and violence interrupters in our city today. And they have been a proven method of reducing the violence in our community.
You know, Ron, and again, we're on the verge of the ocean liner being turned in the context of how they're beginning to look at this population doing public safety work. They're beginning to question the spirit and the integrity of it. But I'm out there almost every other day. We do safe passage for over on Minnesota Avenue in Eli, where we had Susan Junior High and Kimball, and we got about 15 Black men out there just greeting the kids, loving the kids, showing them that we here to support them as they go from home to school and building those relationships. And we're still into the communities doing the work because we understand that these communities are our communities as citizens, and this is our investment, and we can do the work if given the real opportunity and given the real support. The real support have never really been given, Ron. Have never been given pertaining to what's occurring there.
No. So, one of the things that and I was just down in Charlottesville with Brian Williams, and he had a day and a half conference, and they were talking about community problems and establishing strategies through bringing community people together to address the problems but build solutions. And a couple of the guys that are credible messengers were there, and they had mentioned to us, because I was using you again as an example in terms of the longevity of this particular movement and this strategy, and how the success that you all and other places too, because they've done it in Chicago, they've done it out in Oakland, California. So it's not just something that in DC, but DC has been one of the places where using their term, what is evidence-based? Because see, we know that it worked, and there's a foundation for it. But I was saying with the guys, I said, man, you need to come on up to DC and meet Tyrone Parker and them at the Lines of Concern, man, because they're doing this work, and they've run into people in the police and department who don't like that, but they go out there and do the work because they understand that it got to be done. But there's never really been a sufficient financial underpinning of the work of the credible messengers and the violence interrupters, because it's always a grant. It's not that you all are automatically part of the budget, and they could do that. But for some reason, they don't want to do that, even in light of the fact that they have that the evidence show of the effectiveness of the strategies that you all use. Look, remember when we did the project, when we was doing the project up in, matter of fact, I shared the name with the brother down there, and they're going to have him come in, Dr. Richardson from the University of Maryland, that was doing the strategy about working in the emergency room stuff. So, I mean, they was looking at me like I was, like that was strange, because they hadn't heard about all that. But, because I'm old as hell, and we don't did all that kind of work, I'm sharing valuable information with them, but they're going to have they're going to have Dr. Richardson come down there and spend some time with them and talk about it, because that thing about working in the emergency room and then in the community was a very valuable strategy, Tyrone. Very valuable.
Right, and we worked over United Medical doing that. Responding when they would bring an individual in that had been shot or stabbed. We would get the opportunity to talk to the persons, and would ask them, what was occurring? What could we do to help? And our purpose was to circumvent retaliation.
That's right.
In these situations. And man, and a number of occasions, after, and they would talk to us because a number of them knew us. They knew the reputation of the alliance, and they would tell us, what was occurring, man? I had a beef with this here, and tell us who it was. And we would go to these people and talk to them and try to circumvent retaliation, or just dealing with it from that perspective. There are so many tools that can be utilized.
And the police don't do that. That wasn't what the police was out there doing. The police. You couldn't even, I'm not picking on them, but couldn't be found. You couldn't even find them. They were supposed to be in the emergency room interviewing the person, or even back in the community taking a report, but you couldn't even find them. But the Alliance of Concerned Men, the credible messengers, was out there doing. See, that's why I just got a great deal of respect for y'all, bro. Because see, y'all not only had talked the talk, but you have walked the walk, and the evidence proved that it has worked. And that's why I just, again, but see, we live in America, and America is not going to reduce the presence of policing. But having said that, that doesn't mean that we as a community can't do the kind of thing, because we have the evidence. We have the evidence that all of those things have worked. Go ahead, Tyrone. But there's some pictures that they have that I wanted to let you talk about. Some of those. Some of these are just examples of some of the stuff that the Alliance has been involved in.
And as we looked at this picture here, one of the first truths that we negotiated upon being a tourist, as I have made mention how dangerous the place was, a truth as fragile as life itself. In regards, and on the right side of me was Sergeant Duckett with Bob Woodson. That's when we first went into being a tourist, to begin to negotiate this truth when nothing else was working. And we were able to bring both sides together. And as time passed, I look at the next picture, where we actually held this truth. We celebrated it from the community perspective of it, where we marched through the community with the police there with us and the community celebrating that we were no longer under house arrest. This was a liberation aspects of it. And surprisingly, who they asked to be the keynote speaker. Go to the next picture.
Well, they picked the right brother. They got him.
And as we trained our kids, we did life skills with our belief, values, and images and fears presentations that we work with the kids. We got them jobs. They began to clean up their own community.
Right.
They took down the graffiti on the walls. They planted grass. They repaired the buildings. They enhanced their own community and took ownership of it. And by virtue of us having the police involved with us, to show that the police can be there to help to navigate this. As some people would look at this picture, and back in the time, they was, oh, well, he's telling us about, he's working with the police. Nah, but that's not it. And that's not how the people concept. They saw that as the police encouraging them, supporting them to go on. And the next picture on this piece here, as we see Chief Ramsey. Chief Ramsey was the keynote speaker for our fourth anniversary celebration of the Truth Celebration. We have Rodney Monroe. Rodney Monroe basically did a piece in the hood that he called Meeting the Hood for Breakfast in the hood.
Tyrone, when Ramsey first came here, Ramsey wasn't a believer at first. Y'all had to prove it to him.
Yeah, we had to prove it. Yeah. We definitely had to prove. But how could one not be supportive of organizations of previously incarcerated persons that went all through the city? In fact, the Alliance of Concerned Men was in charge of all youth and gang violence for public housing in the District of Columbia, which means that we had 14 different public housing that we was dealing with youth and gang violence. And we were able to practically eliminate the violence and the gang, the homicides in there. But we had support. We had support in regards to jobs. We had support in regards to community. And even, as I say, and this is a perfect example of the support that we had to help bridge this thing. Take it to the next. Well, this is our 5th and 6th year celebration of a truth. This is 5 and 6 years that we held this down with the spirit of transformation. And we actually held it down for 10 years. I couldn't find my 10 years, but we had 10 years of nothing but peace in this particular community. And it was done by basically previously incarcerated individuals going into a community and talking to the kids and getting them to put down their guns, but giving them opportunities with sincere commitment to it. And one of the things that the kids told them, one time CNN came up because we got national attention on it. And CNN, some of the actual kids said, why did you all listen to the Alliance of Concerned Men and then listen to anybody else? And they respond, and their reply was, because nobody else came.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something?
And you know what? And that still remains to a degree here now. We're not getting the real input of people going into these communities and in the streets, man.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. That still exists today. Because they're not paying. We as a society, we talk about we protect our youth because they're the future, but we don't treat them like that. We don't act that way.
Right. And right now, even in my retirement, I'm negotiating a truce between two communities.
Well, you're not retired, Tyrone. Come on now.
Yeah. You
just have a new office. You working out of the house.
New office. I was in Denny's. We had a meeting the other day with 2 gang leaders, and was talking to them about, what does it take for them to put their guns. There's 3 components that we act. We say the first thing we want you to do is look at this, that you are doing this for God and your community. That's the first part. The second part is that this is what you want to do. And the third is what is your dream, or what can we help you to do? And surprisingly, man, they all are prepared. They are prepared, but you just have to have people that are prepared to go into these communities. Deep dive. You can't sit behind the desk and do this.
That's right. That's exactly right. No, I totally agree. Since you said that, Tyrone, tell them about this thing that you all were doing, talking with the young crew members who were doing a lot of stuff that they were doing, and they thought they was doing it out of a kinship and a relationship with their uncle or father who was incarcerated, and then y'all set up this communication line between those that was incarcerated and the young kids back home.
Yeah. We I used to go into the prisons, talking to the men about their responsibilities not relinquished upon confinement, because I know that you got a lot of good men.
Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, that's what I would go into the federal prisons and talking to the men and the women, but primarily the men, under the spirit that their responsibilities are not relinquished upon confinement, that they still had to be able to help us to negotiate truce in their own community, utilizing their reputations and their relationships to reach into our communities and to be in jail and help us. And we negotiated a truce, a couple truce like that with the guys that were still locked up. They called into their communities and told their communities, man, work with them, work with the Alliance of Concerned Men. One guy, his son was shot, and he called me, man, after leaving. He said, Tyrone, he said, man, my son just got shot. Man, he's involved in the gang war. He said, man, is there anything that you could do? I said, yeah, get him to call me. Tell me where he's at. And we went to the young kid, man, and got to talk to him. But his father helped
That's right.
While he was on the inside, because the man he did not want to see his son come in.
That's right.
He was doing life in jail.
That's right.
And the interesting thing, Ron, is that he was doing life in jail, and his father had died in jail. Ooh. And he did not want to see his son come into the same situation, being on that same road. So we was able to bridge him. And man, that the guys on the inside was calling him and talking to the guys as we was putting together this truth, man. And we celebrated it over Ebenezer Baptist Church in front of 3,000 people, where they signed a peace treaty between them, bond, saying that this was over with. And the church stepped in and give them jobs and help them to, make the transformation. But this work, man, the work can be done and it will be done. But you have to have individuals that's committed to it.
That's true. That's very true.
With integrity, morals, and principle. That's the only way it's going to sustain.
That's right. No, man, I know it, man. I'm telling you. No, I remember those stories because we would be talking to them. I just always look forward to those conversations, and I know we touch bases from time to time, and you're always there. I know we went through some health issues together, and we was there, and I just know I just had to be there with you, my brother, because I just understand it. But you've always showed up. You've always been there, man, and that really makes a difference. And that's why this whole idea of working with people like yourself and like organizations like that, they just need to figure out a way in the city how to do it. And I'm not so sure that these politicians in this particular administration, they talk a good game, but it's going to be hard to see that, because there are already discussions about cutting back. I know that there's a returning citizen conference that's going to be here in the area Friday and Saturday of this week. And I just hope, I know some of the local guys are going to be participating, but you know yourself, the history of Washington and formerly incarcerated people just runs deep, because we have always had, Marion was the first one to create an office of returning citizens in this city. And their brothers like Raheem and all them, and Roach and all of them, they had jobs. Look, I was walking the footbeat, Tyrone, I was walking the footbeat on 14th Street, and I met Roach. And when he told me he was incarcerated, but he was working at Channel 5 TV station, I said, "Oh, you must be kidding me, brother."
And then you talk about Chuck Brown to help create the go-go music.
Oh, man.
Peter Green. Then you talk about, individuals that are set on the parole board. We have made a strong contribution. Charles Thornton in charge of the
That's
office.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So it runs deep. But now it's a threat occurring. And we got to be able to look at it. And this is what I say. Never before, I know from the District of Columbia, if you go into any of the prisons where our residents are being held at, the first thing a lot of these men and women are saying, when I come home, I want to talk to the children and work with the youth. And the opportunities have been there by virtue of Kill the Street, accredited messages, and the one-off to be able to make their dream come true from a public safety perspective. But even more of that, we're helping to change the culture, because now you see their cousins or their brothers or their children seeing these guys do good things, and it's taking away the concept of doing bad when they come home or robbing or doing
exactly
things. Yeah. So we are changing the culture, which will have the dividends that will come from that is unmeasurable.
Yeah, that made me think when I was down there with Brian this past week. I met a sister, Tyrone, that got in some trouble and went before a white judge who sentenced her to some time in prison. And in the sentencing conversation, she told me this. She even mentioned it in the meeting, that the judge said that he was the one who sentenced her mother, because her mother was incarcerated. Listen to this. And then he sentenced her. He even made a comment about he will probably be sentencing her daughter. And she said she told that wasn't going to be the case. And now, matter of fact, I left some information with her because I told her she's down there in Charlottesville and doing some work, working with these guys, the credible messengers down there. But I had also shared information with her about what was going on up here. And, you know, the sister that used to work in the Attorney General's office, and then plus that organization. Yeah. And then the organization that the sisters, the national organization. Now here they're supposed to be here also this weekend at that conference. But I told her, I said, you know, that was brave, but you have to break the cycle. But it just goes to show you how racist and biased the criminal punishment system is, because that judge, in my opinion, should have dealt with what was in front of him, not what was in the past and what's in the future. She was standing there in front. Now, whatever she did, she was willing to accept the punishment for that. But it didn't. His comments were really out of line. But it also goes to show that we still have some ways to go to deal with the institution and the fallout of the racism of the institution.
There's no question about the depths of that's occurring, Ron. But I think that, man, when we come together with organizations such as Black World Institute and what Terry is doing, and begin to put another face on the image of, I know, previously incarcerated persons that has the abilities to be able to do this work and be given the right support behind it. Because now, Brian, there's no type of benefits involved with it. There's no retirement involved. I spent 30 years doing this work.
Right.
And left with nothing but the pleasure of knowing that I helped to make a difference in regards to our community. But we've got to give value to these individuals. We got to show them that what they're doing, putting their lives on the line, is worth something at the end of the day. And until
what do you think about it? You know, you were on the Zoom meeting the other weekend when Pastor Mike was on there, and Pastor Mike was talking about this idea, this particular structure where, of course, America's going to have police, and I believe that too. I just don't think they're going to do away with it. And they're going to have it, and for America, they play a role. But we have a role to play too. But what Pastor Mike was talking about was to actually create a structure in our municipal government where civilians did the job of responding to calls for service. For example, we have some places where community people do that right now. We have some places where professionals respond to calls for service when it comes to mental health episodes, or when it comes to dealing with domestic violence, or when it comes to dealing with youth, or when it comes to dealing with community issues. Non-police people respond to those calls, and the calls for requests for assistance go through the communication system directly to the organization or the entity that provides the service. And what I could hear in Pastor Mike's proposal is that could be a government function. Now, I don't disagree with him, because I think so too, but I think it's going to be a different kind of politician that comes up with that kind of idea, because that is not something that I can see some of the typical politicians moving with. But I think it's a kind of an idea that has a place and can be done.
Yeah, I think it can be done, and I think that it has a place. But I think that it should be community led and community guided.
I agree.
Because the government, their perspective of 9 to 5 and understanding the real culture of our communities is not going to be there to a very large degree. This is why you got to have community led based organizations that have a true commitment to the work that's being done in there. This is part of the challenge that we're confronted with now. We're being placed into models that do not fit the communities in which they are applied at. And
That's true.
these models are being dollar driven. And I say dollar driven in this sense here. Say hypothetically, if we open and let's utilize Beneters, and Beneters get to fighting with Congress Heights, which is right across the street from them or down the street from them. They'll tell us that we cannot go there and negotiate anything because we do not have the resource. This is dollar driven for this particular community where we're going to reduce the balance for this particular community.
Right.
And
Right.
we can't go out or go to another community where we know the individuals that's involved in this thing have relationships with them. It's too pinpoint pertaining to the models that we are being asked to be placed into.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree with you. It is dollar driven, and I don't believe you can place a dollar value on life as well as what it takes to have a well-meaning and prosperous life. I don't think that there's a dollar sign that you can place on any of that. Whatever it takes for an individual to be with that, to have that experience, then I think we ought to be able to invest in that. And that's not something that I've come to conclude being old as hell. This is something that I think that has always been the case,
Right. Ron, I'm going to take one step back to the guns for opportunity component that we put together, where these kids was ready and prepared to turn their guns in. And we done it on one other occasion where this kid had a gun in his house and his mother told him, so you're not going to keep no gun or no marijuana in here. Either you're going to get out there or they going to get out here. So the kid came to us and said, man, I can't stay in the house. So could you help me get rid of this gun? We didn't have anything in place, but man, we wound up getting it to the pastor and the pastor turns it in. But what I'm saying in essence, man, we got to really be able to create grassroots approaches to get these guns out of our communities where they are at, man. And the last thing that I would say to that, man, is that up there on 7th, where the kids agreed to wanted to turn their guns in, and nobody heard them. A year later, they had a massive arrest up there. They said it was a drug conspiracy. Where they
I remember that.
Kids up there that had agreed to turn in their guns to us and charged them with all types of drug conspiracy cases. Some of them kids didn't even have a bicycle, and some of them, their mothers was paying their, cell phone bill. But they had been benchmarked as having this and having that. But I only say that we got to come up with ways to be able to fund programs that are community driven, that can work in our community. We don't know what can work, Ron.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in summation, what someone when we was watching the film, someone talked about, for lack of a better term, where do we go from here? And I think he also mentioned that we need to have a conversation. And I mentioned the fact that as a group, we've been meeting, in which Terry and them have been a part of, and we've been meeting and talking about this and what we want to see in our community and what we're willing to put up, because we're not just talking about doing this or talking about it. We're talking about an investment of our time and even our money to the extent that we can invest in it. And it's not going to change overnight, but we have to have a conversation, because there's education in that process. See, there are people who, again, when I was down in Charlottesville, there was people who thought the guys down there, not to a detriment, but they thought that they were doing something that was new. But because we don't have the kind of communication and the education that's associated with it to know and reach out to, see, there should have been an attempt to reach out to the Alliance of Concerned Men and the brothers and sisters that's been doing this, other organizations that have not only been doing this, but supporting this. Tyrone, I mentioned to them the Black Family Summit, because there's there's a nucleus within the Black family, some that support the kind of work that goes on and need to go on in our community, and we're doing it as a community, because that's the only way it's going to get done. And that's part of the strategy, to talk about it, to educate, and then to actually start working on models, identifying places where we can do the kind of work. And I don't want to say test it, because, and the reason I don't want to say test it, because see, I know it can work, because I've seen it. I've witnessed the results of the work that we've done, and so I know it'll work. So I just think that that's where we need to go, and it's going to be a step-by-step process. Someone once said, you learn from mistakes, and so we've made the mistakes. We've even been a mistake or two ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, we don't want to go back to that. We want to keep moving forward.
Ron, I'm involved now with an organization known as CRUISE. And CRUISE is composed of 25 different community-based organizations in the District of Columbia. And primarily men groups, the Alliance of Concerned Men, Nation of Islam, 100 Fathers. And our perspective is to go into these communities and begin to show that Black men care. Black men will be there to support their communities in regards to these transformations. And we're showing up to do the work, to see these kids, how they greet us and how they love us, and how the principal is talking to us, and how we're circumventing further violence around the school is extraordinary. But I think one of the last and final thoughts would be, is as these discussions are taken into mind, let the returning citizen population be involved in these conversations, so our valuable input can be a part of the equation as we step into the community to make changes. Because we are there. We are the natural resources that are in these communities waiting to be developed so that we can be a part of the transformational change for our own communities.
Well, I'm sold, Tyrone. I'm going to be right there with you, my brother, because
I know you are.
I'm going to be there with you. What you would say, ain't no adding that. I'm definitely
adding that, Ron. You've been truly one of our champions in regards to inclusion of our population. Almost every discussion that you will be a part of, you will bring it to the attention that you need to have those who have felt the wealth of society, who have felt the pain of it, but still want to be a part of the good that's occurring, and we'll put our lives on the line to make a change for the greater good of our communities.
Yeah, you can't beat that, Tyrone. I've just seen it, and I've had the pleasure of working with brothers like what's the brother at Kerr down at the organization that Charles used to be in, and then Charles himself. I'm Arthur Rush. Rush grew up around the corner from both of us. And, he lived in Northeast with us. So
absolutely.
I haven't gone. I went in the service and came back home, but I wasn't about to leave my community or the people who was there. And you all had a great deal to do with my development and what in the sustaining of my belief system. So that's important, and I want to be there for each and every one of you all, plus be there for myself, because sometimes it's difficult for me to even show up. So
right. Well, Ron, we know your spirit is always there, and as we look at, how do we take the next steps into making our communities a safer place for us all? And we've got to begin to reimagine total inclusion.
That's right.
Concept. That's right. And that's got to be the picture that will give us exactly what we are looking for, a safer community.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I would say is that people like the strategies for justice, other organizations, Brian and them at the Bratton Institute, where he works down at the University of Virginia, to be the anchors of bringing people together to have and be a part of that conversation, like the conversation that we've been involved in for several years now, bringing people together, everyone, leaving no one out, and and bringing them in to be a part of the conversation. There ain't no idea a bad idea. We need to have that conversation and be involved in, and people need to be a part of it. You're not going to get buy-in from folk that are not a part of something. That's just not going to happen. And again, I don't think people are expecting change overnight, but by the process of working on these things and talking about them and getting to know one another, and in that process also, we need to celebrate we need to celebrate the excellence, the things that we have had success with. We need to celebrate those, because those things are key. You know, we're moving along, and we're not. None of us are. We have a time on us, and so we need to really be thinking about all of that as we do this work. But I'm just glad to be able to do it. But I think Terry, Brian, Dr. Daniels, and them need to continue to be the foundation of the work to bring us together.
No question about it. You just named 5 excellent individuals. And the Alliance of Concernment also had 2 conflict resolution manuals that have been created with American University, with us, to create 2 conflict resolution manuals that help to give the guidelines on how to make your community safer and stronger together. So as we take into the next steps, let us look at bringing everything together at the table. I think that's the common denominator. And thank you so much for this opportunity to be a part of you, Terry, in this great discussion. We'll have major input on public safety in our communities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Waste of words, waste of breath, 'cause I've got none to say. Thoughts stay burned inside my chest. Can't take it one more day. No matter how much pain I'm in, no matter how, gotta think, I gotta breathe. Change has to come.